How can we make dinners sacred again so that we can rebuild our culture from the inside out? My name is January Donovan, founder of the Women's School, where we offer practical life training on how to be a woman. So today, the topic is the sacredness of family dinners, which is so lost in our culture, which is a big reason why so many children today are unhappy, causing havoc in our school system and our society. And I think we need to talk about a very important conversation of families that believe in good family values in the lost art of making dinner sacred again. So, how do we push back against our children pushing back from dinner and from having that sacred time together? And how can we bring back a very important time of coming in together and pausing as a family and making time for each other? So, how do we do this? Let's begin. Making dinner sacred again. Do you know that 30% of people are now opting out of having dining room tables? I mean, what we're basically saying is that a big part of our culture no longer values family life together. And not only that, these are the 30%, but then you also have the people who do have the dinner table but don't actually eat. So we actually have a greater number of a lack of reverence for family time and dinner time. So, it seems like common sense to eat as a family together, but really it isn't common practice. And there's a lot of things that are common sense right now that are so far from common practice. And I think part of the reason why there's such corruption, chaos, and really just a rampant immorality in our culture is we've lost a sense of the basic infrastructure of culture, which is family life. And I think that women today need to be aware of the dangers of, I would say, the slow, subtle uh, dehumanization that's happening that's coming at us every direction, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's our school system, the lack of prayer, the lack of reverence for our sexuality, or perhaps the rampant activity of just doing that robs us of the most sacred and the most important infrastructure in our society, which is a family life. So I think this is just a little bit of kind of an awakening in saying, if we're looking at our schools right now, and the other day I saw, I mean, it was so tragic. There was a teenage transgender boy who basically just came from behind and beat up this young girl, and she was having a hard time breathing, and just the anger in our school system, and nobody came to help her. So what we have right now are children that are unhappy with their life, that they are capable of such destruction and such anger that they are wreaking havoc in our school system. So we have to kind of pause and think, what's my responsibility? Why is this happening right now? Well, why should this be important to you? As a mother, without a doubt, we cannot shield our children from the corrupt world. I have 8 children, and I just want to put them in a cocoon. And I think there is a time where we have to create that safe haven for our children as we raise them, but eventually they're going to go out in the world. They're going to be, they're going to be in high school and middle school, and they're going to see the world as it is. And we have got to prepare them. So why is this important for us? Well, what we do is that we have to create an infrastructure in our home where, if other children are not having dinner, we set a standard that in this home, dinner is sacred. And I live in a town where there's a lot of children. We picked this town specifically because we wanted to raise our children where there was a lot of family life, and there was a lot of children having 8 children. And so what I do is that I really make an effort to uh, say dinner is sacred. Everybody needs to be home. And sometimes kids push back, or there's a lot of things going on, but that the children understand that dinner is sacred. Now, it's also true that then what we can do is influence the families around us to say, well, dinner is sacred too. So we become that light that holds, I would say, a standard of, I would say, connection and conversation. And that way we can influence and inspire other families to also have dinner. It's also true that if your children's friends and that they do not have a standard of family dinner, or it's something that is not sacred to them, it could be that your children will also be influenced and will start to believe that you're this crazy person, that the unique family who always has dinner, family dinner together, because that's what it is. They're influenced by their peers, and so we have to do a really good job to create a standard from the when they're young. And if we need to, if you have older children right now, reset the standard of the infrastructure in our family, so that you will model for them what it's like to hold firm a standard of connecting together as a family. So I think this is so, I would say, revolutionary if you think about it. Even though it's so simple, the idea of eating together as a family seems so revolutionary in a world that has lost its soul. I really think that, at least in the West, we've gone we've lost a sense of human dignity. We've lost so much of, I would say, a moral compass, that some of the most basic things, such as dinner, is foreign to so many. And I think that's what we need to do, because now what we're seeing as a consequence, that there's an erosion of the infrastructure of our society. If you look at the middle schools, if you look at the high school, the danger, the chaos in our streets, where does that come from? It has to begin in our home life. And we're seeing that the basic infrastructure of culture, which is family, if we are not keeping that sacred, and we don't push back, mothers push back, and the importance of having that time together as family, to build, to connect, to deepen, to form them, to train them, then they're going out in the world and they have no idea how to defend themselves from immorality, or they could be part of the problem because they too it's never been modeled for them. So what we are seeing is an erosion of society, and we can complain all day about it, but if we are not doing our part in honoring the sacredness of connecting as a family together, then we could be part of the problem, and when we might not know it, because there's a cost to a lack of family connection. If we are not eating dinner together, then our children could be robbed of the opportunity to connect together as siblings. A lot of the siblings right now, a lot of the trauma that comes from family comes from sibling, I would say, trauma. And where do our children learn to connect, to listen, to have conversation? That's a great space for us to have dinners and saying, okay, no, this is where we talk. And I've got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, so dinner could be a little bit of a party, and yet we have to stand our ground and say, yes, it is busy, and maybe I'll get my little boys to eat early, and maybe they'll be running around, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to establish this norm. Just because it's challenging, because there's two little kids, and there's a lot going on, it doesn't mean that we don't fight through it, right? Number two, we also establish a norm of unhealthy eating habits, because if our children are just doing microwave food and drive-by eating, they're also establishing an unhealthy lifestyle that could promote to also unhealthy lifestyle outside of their home, where they're eating fast food, they're not taking care of themselves, which leads to them not liking their body, which leads to them not knowing how to take care of their body, which then influences their mindset. I mean, it's a ripple impact. And this is why we talk about a life of wholeness, because learning how to eat is so important to our mental health, to our emotional health, to our physical health, but really to our overall health, our friendship, our relationship as mothers. And so if we don't even, establish it at a very young age, then what we're doing is that we are training future mothers to be stressed and overwhelmed, because they have no command of what it means to have, healthy quality food that's not drive-by. Number three, when you're connecting, and you have your siblings, and your children are eating together, is a time for us and for each other to listen to what's going on in their life. Maybe there's something challenging, and it's a great way for, say, Pia, tell me about what's going on, and then Jack can hear it, and Jack's like, well, I can give you advice on that, as opposed to nobody's paying attention to what's happening in their own personal lives, and nobody knows what's going on. And instead of us actually learning to connect deeply, listen and pay attention and build compassion and empathy, we're just on our own merry way. And it could be sort of, and it just not even a big deal. We just have a lot going on. We just can't do it. Maybe we'll do it once a week. But the idea is that these have consequence, right? Because to have siblings that don't know how to empathize with each other, why would they learn if they don't even know what's going on in their own life? Well, how would they learn if they have no practice? And then we complain about them because they're fighting and bickering outside of the dinner table in their own homes, and we're like, it's so stressful, my kids are fighting. Well, we haven't created the right infrastructure for them to actually learn how to communicate with each other effectively, learning to have conflict, learning to listen, learning to build empathy, learning to hold boundaries, learning to wrestle with hard conversations. And we can use the dinner table as an opportunity to do some of these, right? And then number four, children today do not feel like they belong somewhere. When a child doesn't feel like they belong somewhere, they're going to find something else where they can feel like they belong. This is where children end up in gangs or drugs and sex and alcohol because, at some degree, even though it's so immoral and not good and they know it, at least they sense a sense of belonging with all the other children that probably have not had the sacredness of dinner, are also susceptible to immoral behavior. And that dinner table together gives them a sense of, no, we're a family unit, we belong here and you're welcome here. And even though it seems so small, but it isn't, I don't think it's small. What a great opportunity for them to feel like, no, my family eats dinner together, this is our time together. And they're going to look back, and they're going to look back and say, you know what, it was crazy and it was, but I loved it. My husband's one of 11 children, and I always think he always has this great family dinner stories of, somebody spilling the milk, or there was bugs, that were falling from the roof, and they were laughing and having conversation. But the memories are beautiful. So making that a sacred space where you build memories to the dinner table, I mean, what a beautiful thing. And then last, learning to clean up together as a family. Isn't it great to be able to say, okay, we clean up together, we time ourselves, this is how we clean. Most young adults right now have no sense of actually how to clean and clean effectively, because maybe they haven't had dinner together and they don't know how to clean together as well. These are training that you can't just know in your mind. You actually have to physically practice this over and over again so that it becomes part of your, becomes a habit, right? It literally gets wired into your brain, the habit of cleaning effectively, having a conversation while cleaning, put some music on. I mean, this is such an important time for us to rebuild culture, uh, just by working together and cleaning together. Another consequence is that if there's, going, you've got to wake up in the morning, you just shove yourself in the morning, there's no eating together as well. And then you're going, there's lots of activities. And then that dinner time should be a time to pause and just break and sort of a collective pause. But if we don't have that built in, then what we are training our family and our children is to just, it's okay to have no rest. It's okay to have no pause. It's okay to go, go, go. Or it's okay to eat alone. You can eat alone by yourself. I mean, it's just so sad. I see the children that eat alone by themselves, and or maybe they're there but they're eating and everybody has their cell phones. And I think that we're not seeing the ripple impact of this go 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 world, or this world tethered on our phones, the impact of now that loneliness is an international epidemic. How is this happening in a world where we are hyper connected through the internet, that we can't, that we're lonely? Our children are lonely. Our children are in are medicated. There's a lot more ADHD. I mean, these are real issues that we have to deal with, and not just keep medicating our children and trying to, you know, fight the symptom without actually going to the source of the problem, right? And also, number three, the lowering of standards of family life, where now dinner is no longer sacred. And that what you are offering your children is that it's okay for you not to actually connect together as a family. It's okay for you to eat alone. That there's not a standard, that eating alone should never be a standard in your house. That doing a drive-by food should never be a standard in our own home. And think about the standard that we're creating of loneliness, of isolation, of lack of belonging, when we tolerate that kids just eat on their own and just imagine a child eating by themselves, fending for themselves, and eating there without anybody to talk to. And we wonder why they don't have communication skills. Well, maybe there's no practice, right? And so what's the solution? Well, mothers need to hold the line. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying I have 8 children. I'm building a business with my husband. There's a whole lot going on in my life, and I have to continue to raise the standards of my family life and hold the line so that I can create an infrastructure that holds, dinners sacred. Mothers have a duty to sell to their children the sacredness of breaking bread together. This is why I'm such a proponent of mothers taking sales skills, because we have to sell to our children morality, homework, contributing at home, chores, dinner table. We have to know how to sell to them, and telling is repelling. That's part of one-on-one sales skills, is that how do we sell to them? We have to invite them. It's another podcast for itself, but the skill of selling to them, the sacredness of breaking bread together, is an important, I would say, duty that we have, so that we can continue a generation where we are holding, I would say, sacredness, the infrastructure of society. Because right now, the brokenness that's happening in so many of our school system, and if you think about the rage, the anger, I wonder how Where I wonder if we can trace it back to a lack of family dinner together. I wonder if we can trace it back. I'm sure there's a lot more factors, but I would almost say that dinner wasn't sacred, that there was not a sense of belonging that made them feel as though this is a safe and beautiful place for you to actually contribute who you are, share who you are, that we can learn from you, that you are a valuable human being. Because most people that wreck our society is because they don't feel they're valuable. Therefore, why should they honor the value of another human person, right? So I really think that it's time for this dinner table revolution. And if we can reestablish this dinner table revolution where mothers are fighting for dinner, I think this is how we do our part to rebuild culture, one child at a time, one home at a time, one mother at a time. And it sounds so simple and so basic. And yet, what is missing in our culture is precisely that. It's the most basic things, whether it's greeting, being polite, being responsible, thinking for yourself, making decisions. Some of the most basic skill set in our culture is exactly what's missing. Therefore, common sense is no longer common practice, not because we don't want to, but because we don't know how to. Right? How would you know how to take care of your body if you've never been taught how to actually think about food, how to eat together, how to make it fuel and not just something that you sort of binge or shove yourself? It's for fuel for contribution. That's how we should think of food, is fuel for contribution. So we have two options, as mothers. We can either make excuses of why this is not possible, because that's what you're thinking, Jenny, it's impossible. I've got so much game. You should see how I'm looking at, and my life is so real, in the sense that I have 8 children. I've got a golfer that plays golf every day because that's part of his dream. I've got two, my two girls, my two teenagers are in sports. And then I've got, a 7 and an 8-year-old that also have a lot of, activities and play dates. And then I've got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it is work, and you really have to be so firm in your boundaries and your skill set. But we can choose to either make excuses for ourselves, or we can choose to make a decision to say, how can I make this happen? How can I be part of the dinner table revolution that will be part of our building culture moving forward, where we're resisting, the norm of a lack of community life and lack of family life that is causing havoc in our culture? I want to be part of the solution as a mother. So what do I need to do, January? Well, you need to make a decision and say, I'm going to find a solution to make dinner sacred in my family. Now, I've got this thing that always helps me to remind myself when I start to think it's not possible. And it's called a reticular activating system, RS, part of your brain. It basically helps you, expand what you focus on, right? What you focus on expands. So if you're saying it's possible for me to bring my family in for dinner and find a solution, then you're going to find it. But if you are going to tell yourself now that it's not possible because you work late or whatever, I work late too. It's 5 o'clock right now, and there's a rhythm of life that needs to be recalibrated. But there is a part of my brain that's always asking myself, how can I make sure that dinner is sacred? And then always making that in the forefront of my mind. And then you will see the solution. We want to use our RAS, reticular activating system that God made to help us actually find the solution of what we're looking for. Instead of being defeated and saying it's not possible before we can even try, let's use our brain to our advantage, so that it can help us actually find the solution of what it is that we want, which is, as mothers, we want to hold space for that, family time. And I think no mother wants to say, well, there's no unity in my family, right? So I think what we need to do is that mothers need to arm up for battle. Because I'll tell you, getting your teenagers there is sometimes feels like a battle. And I love that this is an armor, because you have to kind of fight for it. You have to fight to rebuild the standard, but it will be worth it, because what you're doing is not only contributing to your children's happiness in the future and fulfillment, because now you're establishing a standard of the sacredness of dinner, you're also contributing to society that's lost the sacredness of dinner. Therefore, there's a lot of unhappy and broken children that are wrecking society. So what you're doing is you're holding the line and you're fighting the battle. And it is going to be a battle if you have teenagers. If you have young kids, get a head start now. Dinner is sacred. Make that your script. And that's what I tell my children. So if you're just starting out and you're looking at me, you're like, January, my children are teenagers, there's no way I can do it. It's not your fault if nobody ever taught you to honor the sacredness of dinner and gave you the skills to push back against a culture that no longer honors the value of the human person. Therefore, they don't value the connection that happens during our mealtime. But it is your responsibility to raise responsible children, so that they too can actually contribute to society. It is our responsibility. If, most of us have not been trained how, and that's what the women's school is. It's a how-to school for women. And that's why, you have to make the decision to say, I'm responsible. How can I then find strategic solution to then make dinner sacred? So how do we get our children to eat meals? Now, this is the how-to part. So, well, caveat. What I train on here is really what I call EFE. I'm going to give you my experience, but also my failures as a mom, but also my expertise for training women in practical life for the last 25 years. So take what you can take. These are the practical how to now, and say, I'm just going to implement two or three. January, I understand that. Maybe I don't understand this. And remember that we need accountability. If we really want to be serious about our ability as women to contribute meaning back into culture and fight the culture war, then you have to take responsibility and do your part. So get an accountability partner, get coaching. We have the Wholeness Coaching School if you want to get coaching in there, and prioritize your ability to build your skill set for such a time where we need stronger women that are going to hold the line. And strong women are not born, they are formed. And that's why we need a school to help us become, including myself. I'm still, in constant training. And I always tell women, just because I have 8 children doesn't mean I've got it all figured out. As a matter of fact, it's because I have 8 children that I'm constantly trying to figure out. We never arrive. We only evolve into the next whole version of ourselves. And every child, every season, every opportunity requires us to learn new skills. So here we go. How do we do this? Number one, reset your expectation. I'm going to give you a script, which means that you're going to bring your children down and say, okay, we're going to reset expectation. And you're say, maybe dinner wasn't sacred before. And you say to them, well, I've learned something new that will serve your ability to be happier adults someday. So I'm going to implement something new, AKA, we're going to have dinner together as family. This is my way of fighting for you and your happiness. Now, this might mean we need to recalibrate our schedule. It might mean that we need to say no. It might mean that, I need to adjust a little bit of my work schedule or dad's work schedule, but we're going to make a decision to make dinner sacred. Now, maybe, it's dinner sacred 4 times a week. We have dinner together 5 times a week, 3 times a week. I know for myself, there's times that we just can't because there's just a lot of activities that inevitably my husband has to drive, my other children, but then the rest eats dinner together. So you do what you can do with what you have, and maybe it's just 2 times a week and you can start there. But reset your expectation, talk with your husband and say, listen, I really want to establish this for their own sake, for our sake, but also for the siblings' sake, to learn about each other. And they're going to push back. I always say, they're going to push back for 2 weeks, hold the line. They're going to push back for a month, hold the line. I always say the 2-week mark is when, it takes 15 days to sort of wire a neuron through repetition. And I thought, hey, that's a great way for you. Just hold the line for 2 weeks, the process of repetition, and organize sort of what your day looks like. So you say, okay, we're going to start this next week, right? And fail, you're going to fail, right? And so, but you try. You do so. You try even when you know you're going to fail, because everyone fails. Number two, create a morning and evening routine. I'm going to give you this briefly. This is what we teach in the women's school, but you want to be able to say, okay, my morning routine looks a lot like 6 to 8 a.m. you know, rise and prepare, 7:30 eat together, 7:30 8 a.m. clean up and go, or pack your lunch. It's going to vary, obviously. I'm just giving you literally what you can do is just in a notepad, just write it out. I train women in how to build a routine. I think building a routine is one of the most non-negotiable skills that the mothers need to have. Otherwise, it's a constant anxiety and stress and overwhelm because you're always reacting all day. So a sense of sacredness of a routine is what actually keeps the dinner table sacred. So build your morning routine and then build your evening routine. It's going to vary different day to day, but at least okay, in my home, they just know 5 to 6 is dinner, or 5:30 to 6:30 is dinner, depending on, sometimes it gets dark earlier right now. But you just have a ballpark, and there's a ballpark of, we pray at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and they know it's shower and dinner time. So there's a rhythm, right? And that rhythm can have variations, because some children will have some variations of activity, but they also know this is the norm. So you sort of establish, so learning how to build a routine consistently then puts everybody kind of not on the defense, rather on the offense. You just know this is what it looks like. And if you haven't done it, then you need to retrain it. It's, once again, not only are you resetting expectation for dinner, now you're resetting expectation for a rhythm of life and a routine. And expect to push back. but it'll be worth it. Number three, learn 10 simple half an hour menu. That's good. I love to cook and I used to just watch the cooking show. I don't make anything complicated. I teach my children to cook. Watch just a YouTube video, pick 10, and you can do it at night. I kind of just learn the basic, right? And maybe some of you know how to cook already, so you know how to do this, but I always said don't make anything complicated when you've got young children. Find something really good and easy that is not complicated, and there's plenty of them, and put them in your arsenal, right? Practice cooking and prepping. A great way to do this, because I do it with my children, is I have a timer on my refrigerator. There's my night timer, and I'll just time them. How long does it take you to cook? How long does it take you to clean? I want my children to be part of chopping, of cleaning, of my 8-year-old will plan our menu. So different, I would say, different parts of the menu they can also contribute. I've got a son that is now dairy free, and I've got a girl that's gluten sensitive. So my she helps my son, my 11-year-old, also cook things that are dairy free. So you are strategically not doing it for them, right? You're also helping them create those menus. Pick something healthy and, expect to push back for two, like I said, but hold your ground. And once again, sell, sell, sell. Sell is you're going to honor the sacredness of this time together. And obviously, it's not just that. It's kind of a collaboration of that you have to make dinner fun, right? Set your menu. My Ariel does my menu. Keep it pretty simple. My menu is the same every morning. I'm sorry, typically the same every week. We've got eggs or oatmeal or pancakes or smoothie, so that you can keep it consistent. Lunch, you can obviously, if they pack lunch or whatever that simple lunches or leftover, and then dinner, just plan it at the very beginning of the week so you know what food to thought. It's not complicated. I'm sure you probably already know this, but if you plan it better, then you're more likely to actually hold that dinner sacred, because you already have things planned, and your children are actually going to look at you and already see that plan and play. And if you miss a week, that's okay. I miss a week, miss a couple weeks sometimes, but you sort of go back to that. And my menu is in my fridge, is one of those whiteboards, and then so they can see it and they know what to expect. And I think that, especially for lunch, it's easy for your children to resist a lot of things because they don't have the menu plan. So that, I think, avoids all that. Number five, I love this. Set the ambiance. To me, ambiance is so important. And mothers, I think we can do this so beautifully with music. I put a lot of, I would say, relaxing quality or classical music in the background. Sometimes in the evening, we'll put some fun country music. It all depends. In the morning, we'll have more classical music, and the evening we'll have fun music, but then dinner we'll have like some Nora Jones, some old classics. So, and maybe it's not music, maybe it's just soft, whatever your family likes, but setting the mood is an important part of actually having a dinner together. And this is not going to look like those Instagram pictures, because you have a 2 and a 3-year-old, and sometimes it's really loud, and it is for me. And sometimes you're just trying to kind of even just help them and get through dinner, but you avoid, sort of getting, I would say, rattled up. Keep that smile on your face. It's just dinner, right? It's just dinner. So putting this lighting and the music and preparing with the right script and conversation helps engage them. We have this thing called GFG in my home, gratitude, failure, and growth. So we go around the room, and even my 2-year-old, my turn, Martin, blah, blah, and he kind of disrupts the conversation. It is what it is. But then they know, what are you grateful for? How have you failed today, and how have you grown from that failure? And that becomes kind of the conversation. So it's imperfect, but then the more you create the ambiance and the lighting and the atmosphere, and there was a time where I could do some candles. Right now, every time I put a candle, my 2-year-old just blows it, and it's great, but it just can't sustain it. So do whatever you think could be sustainable. Number six, reset ground rules. I think that, I'm always kind of redoing, almost resetting or communicating the reset of the ground rules. And every now and then, I feel like every 3 or 4 months, I'm like, what's going on? Like, everybody needs to be home for dinner. They know it. And we just need to sort of reset the ground rules. What are the standards of etiquette? And I'll tell you, that's, to me, is a real challenge, because my children need to work on their etiquette. And so that, to me, is sometimes a challenge, but it's like, no, we can't, they're going to push back January, but, setting the table and getting the water out, or who's in charge of who, and that, make sure there's nobody eats before everybody sits down. I mean, so it depends what your rules are. You can make up your own rules. That's important to me, and my children break it all the time. This one, non-negotiable. There's no phone for dinner. There's just not an option. And even sometimes, you have to put the phone away, because then it dings, and you want to make sure that they're not distracted. So it's just that there's no And you don't, I get on sometimes with my teenagers, and even for their own lunch, I'll have a phone while they're eating. And I said, a mealtime is sacred. It's when you put your phone away. So pushing and holding that line, no one gets up, right? Until we're done. My children get up all the time. And I'm telling you, I sound like a broken record, but I'm like, I'm fighting. I'm fighting for this. And you just have to laugh at yourself. We eat what's served. That's a standard in my house. It might not be in your house, but I don't want to make 10 different menus, except if they have an allergy, which is now happening to my kids as of recent. But we eat what's served, right? There's consequences when you're late. I'm very firm about the consequences of my late. My children have to write scripts, so my children have had to write hundreds and hundreds of scripts when they're late for dinner. That's how serious we are, Ryan and I, for the consequence for dinner. Also, they have to write a presentation on the importance of being on time and no eating upstairs. And it's just something that, I have a policy that kitchens close after a certain time. There's no eating upstairs. We try to, unless they might have permission for movie night. And it's just a way for us to make sure that we're not just snacking all day, that we're keeping sacred that dinner time. Number 7, push back against the pushback. Keep selling them on why they need this in their life, and this is really why I think mothers need sales skills. And we need to empathize, we need to align, and then we need to push back and we need to sell it to them, right? And say, I hear you, yeah, but I'm doing this because I know it'll be important for you someday. Ma, I hear you, but I know this will be important. They'll eventually understand if they see that this is something that's a beautiful space, that they love it, that they love the food. You've got to make the food taste good because that's what's going to make them come back. That's the importance of the environment. That's the importance of the conversation, because even though they're going to push back, they know, you know what, deep down inside, I love that I get to have dinner with my family. And I know that for my kids, and my kids, I asked them, like, do you have, do your friends have dinner? And said, no, some do and some don't. And I can see it in their eyes, right? Sports should not be more important than family time. Sports is important especially for those that are competing, at high level. And maybe dinner is just 3 times a week because of all the sports, but nonetheless, there should be a standard and an understanding that family life is more important than the sports. Okay. And I think that should be sort of collectively, because it's then we've lost sight of the importance of rebuilding culture and the importance of family life if we ourselves as mothers are the ones that are not holding the line and saying, well, maybe it's not, maybe sports more important than dinner. And then we wonder why families not connected. We wonder why kids are lonely. We wonder why kids don't feel like they're, they have a sense of belonging, or they're struggling in school, or they're always fighting with their siblings. Well, we haven't created the infrastructure that keeps that family life sacred. And number 5, recalibrate every season. Recalibrating is a skill set that we offer, that we train in the women's school, but we do need to recalibrate. Recalibrate is resetting the standard. That's what it means, right? Number 8, make the meal taste good. Learn the skill of cooking, study ingredients, even if it's 10 minutes a day, once a week, find healthy option. It's set the table, learn proper etiquette. I mean, the things that you can do, some of these things I can't, like some of the etiquette, I feel like I need to get my children on etiquette class, but one of the things that I did when I got married was I wanted to have beautiful dishes. I wanted to have something where kids actually enjoyed the dishes that they ate. And so I never registered for China. I registered for kind of a couple sets of dishes, and I switched them around depending on the season, and it just kind of gives them a little bit of something different, something new, and something novel. And so I think it's good for them to kind of feel like, oh, this is a nice dish. And I did this while through this thrift store. I remember some of my favorite dishes were from the thrift store. So it's not as though we have to spend a lot of things. I think that's always the assumption. I think it's about creativity. It's about being resourceful. And it's about making something so simple look beautiful by just the way we set it up. Do we have 3-year-olds? And you can say, Jane, it's not possible. My 2-year-old, my 3-year-old. If you say it's not possible, it's not going to be possible based on your reticular activating system. Is it going to look perfect and look like this picture? No, it's not, right? But the point is that you're creating a standard, and that's the goal. Is not what people think. It's not the perfection. Is that you've created a standard that helps build their infrastructure for their future family someday. So number 9, learn to clean efficiently. I think cleanliness is one of those things that sometimes we don't realize is wrecking our family life, because cleaning the kitchen becomes overwhelming. I've had trained women, after 2 decades, and you would not imagine just the kitchen skills that's so lacking and how it impacts the marriage, impacts the family. If the kids don't like to be, it's so daunting, and cleaning is so daunting, and kids don't like to be in their home because it's not clean. I mean, it's a skill that most of us have never been trained on, but it's something that we do have to tackle because it does does create an impact in the harmony and the order of our home and the beauty of our home. So learning to clean the kitchen efficiently requires, time management, mind management, learn a new skill, whether it's cleaning, sweeping really fast or doing the dishes really fast. And I'm on it with my children. I'm like, this needs to be repeated. I sound like a broken record at times, but it's like, okay, I'm fighting for you. This is cheap work. That's what I always say. And help them find a role model. I think it's important for them to see even something that's, beautiful, or eating dinner together as family. Just show it to them, because image paint a picture in their mind, and it helps them sort of imprint that in their mind and their heart. And it gives them an idea, especially when it's not being modeled by, by maybe their peers. And last, we have to upskill ourselves as mothers. The foundation of everything that you can do to reset your home for the sacredness of dinner is hinges on your skill set, your ability to sell to them the importance of dinner, your boundary and pushing back and not worried about what people think, you saying, drawing the line and being firm without guilt or shame. It's like, well, this is a new routine, not angry about it. That's a skill set, right? Learning to communicate effectively. Communication is twofold. It's knowing what to say, but then knowing how to say it. Just as boundary is twofold, it's knowing where your line is and knowing how to communicate your line. These are skills, and this is what we teach in the women's school, because nobody's showing us how. Maybe, when we're married and we realize, wait a minute, I need to learn boundaries, right? And sometimes we're like, there's collateral damage because I've spent most of my years not knowing how to do boundaries, and no wonder I feel lonely and upset and feel like people are walking all over me. These are non-negotiable skills for us to rebuild our own homes. Routine, non-negotiable. A routine really helps create harmony in our home. It's not this stringent, like you got to do this and this, but it's a sense of rhythm of life, like seasons. And I think that's a skill set that we need to impart in our children, but it's something that we need to actually model in our own home. Recalibrating skills. I'm just giving you the top 5, but I do think there's more than this. Recalibrating skills, that means that you're resetting expectation. Pivoting skills, which means you're doing a 360 and say, you know what? I thought we were going to do this, but now we're actually not going to go anymore to Walmart or whatever Target, because now we need to be home for dinner. And learning how to communicate that. Skills are I love skills because it helps you think about something that you can just learn. Anybody can learn it. It's just the how, and practicing that over and over again to actually acquire that new skill. And I think as mothers, in order for us to hold sacred the dinner table, we're going to need skill after skill after skill, and the mastery of some of these skill set. Because if we lack boundary skills or routine or recalibrating or pivoting or sales skills, then even though we want to be able to establish, a healthy dinner, we can't, right? And that's really what in the Women's School Masterclass, we teach so much of a skill training, because ultimately an undisciplined woman creates a hard life for herself and her family. And that's why we need to create sort of this life of wholeness based on training ourselves. And that's what the Women's School is. And if you're interested in learning more about the New Woman Masterclass, this is, to me, just such an exciting time to be a woman, because I think, we had sort of this radical feminism, I would say 100 years ago, where women could not vote, they had no choice. And to now we have women in the Western world who can do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and neither are free. Those 100 years ago, and I think women today are not free. We're not free. We have freedom, but we're not free. And so I think there's a new woman that's rising from these ashes. And that woman is that mother, that friend, that wife, that single woman who's willing to take responsibility for her life of training, practical life and discipline and training and taking responsibility. And I think this new woman is what's going to, rebuild our culture, rebuild men, rebuild family life. And that's why we're training here, so that we can have practical, I would say, training and actually how to rebuild the infrastructure of our society through the training of women. And that's what the Women's School Masterclass. So if you're interested, join the New Woman Masterclass. You can go to newwomanmasterclass.com and you can join that movement. You get to have your own coach, your own accountability partner, your own group, and you go to school together as women. And I love it, because I think for years they took God out of our school system, and now they're taking gender out of our school system. And so what we're doing in the Women's School is we're bringing the school into the heart of the home, into the heart of the women. We offer practical training in context of a community of women. So you have your small group of women, you'll learn these skills together. So if that resonates with you, please go to the newwomanmasterclass.com and you can sign up for our courses, and we'll set you up with a coach. I just believe in it. I just really believe that for such a time as this, we can no longer sit back and watch our world crumble, watch our family life, our men, our women really wreak havoc in our society, because they are so unfulfilled with their life. And unfulfilled people hurt people hurt other people. And so what we want is that we've got to start training from the inside out. We've got to start from our own hearts and our own homes, because if we want to have peace in the world, then we need to have peaceful homes that comes from our peaceful hearts. So hold your ground, mothers. There is a battle for a children's soul, and the dinner table is where you can fight for them. Right? That's one place where you can fight for them. So don't take it lightly. Recalibrate, your own reflection on how you have created an infrastructure and the sacredness of our, dinner conversation. And I think let's bring back the tradition of dinner table. This is about the dinner table revolution. And I think if we all take the time as mothers to do this and make it happen, not make excuses for ourselves, we might be surprised on, what we can do as a society to be part of the solution in a world that's gone so immoral, in a world where family life and a moral life and a sense of virtue and a sense of respect for God, for family, for faith, for our sexuality is so lost. And I always have women and say, "What can I do, January? I see what's happening in the world." I said, "This is what we can do. It's not, it's not enough. We have to go out and fight and fulfill our unique and irreplaceable call to fight the spiritual warfare around us. But simultaneously, we need to, armor up for the battle by also fighting for our own children and our own hearts and our own homes and their own, I would say, fulfillment and sense of belonging, so they will not be susceptible to an immoral society that's corrupting them everywhere." So even though it sounds so small, that sacredness of the dinner table could be the movement that we need to bring back honor to our, family life and really to our society and our culture. So I hope this show has served you. If you are interested, please go to newwomanmasterclass.com and share this podcast as a practical training that you can share with other mothers out there as we continue to fight for our families, our faith, our country, our home, and bring back really the honor of what it means to be a woman for such a time as this. Thank you again, and I look forward to hearing from you and some of the comments that you have.